Hey there. Thank you for taking the time to watch this Astranti video where we'll be showing you a quick extract of some of our CIMA study resources. As you can see from the word on screen, we're going to be talking all about organisations today. Now this will be really useful if you are currently studying for your E1 or your OCS exam, but organisations are so widely talked about that it's probably relevant and quite interesting at whatever level of study you're currently at. So in this quick video, we're going to talk about all the different types of organisations you might come across. So let's get started. We'll first start by talking about the two different sectors that a country's economy gets split into generally. And that is our private sector and our public sector. To start with, our private sector is an organisation that is only owned by private individuals or groups. And we're going to zoom out of the private sector because this can actually be categorised into a few more groups. We have our not-for-profit groups and our profit-seeking groups, which I'm going to show you a little bit more about now. As the name implies, profit-seeking groups have one main objective, and that is to maximise its returns, either for its owners or for its shareholders. And we can further split profit-seeking organisations into two more main groups, that is, unincorporated and incorporated. We're going to go even further down this family tree of organisations and look a little bit at what an unincorporated organisation is. So, in an unincorporated organisation, a business and its owners will hold the same legal identity. And what we mean by that is that the person who runs the organisation or the business is held personally responsible for any debts incurred by the organisation, which can be a bit tricky for some people because that can mean potentially unlimited liability for debts. For example, let's take Fred Smith, who is a self-employed painter and decorator. Because it's just Fred working as part of this organisation, you might think it's much easier just to operate under his own name. It's much less confusing, he's the only one that's got to sort everything out, so he would be an unincorporated organisation. As we carry on, we actually have two main types of unincorporated organisation, a sole trader and a partnership. Sole traders are actually when we have one single owner who is of course wholly liable for debts. That's just like Fred Smith, our painter and decorator. Looking at partnerships, a partnership is a bit different because we actually have a collection of owners who are still jointly liable for debts, but they are actually working together. So imagine if our decorator Fred Smith got some friends together and they put some money together to take a loan out and they wanted to start an unincorporated partnership. They might go to the bank for this loan. However, if things went quite badly for them, they would actually lose all their savings and still have to pay back any debt to the bank because they remain unincorporated. They must repay all their debts. So that's unincorporated. There is another option though. We have our incorporated organisations. This is when a business owner decides that they want a separate legal identity to the business, so they actually have limited or no liability for the debts the organisation incurs. And there are two main types of category of incorporated organisation, with private limited companies and public limited companies. Now, a private limited company is simply where you cannot issue shares to the public. And that means that you have quite a high degree of control because obviously there are less owners per se because less people have shares. You don't have to report to lots of different people, meaning that you only have to keep a certain amount of people happy. That's why you might have more control. You might get what you want more than in a larger group. And some really good examples of this are Walker's Snack Foods or Virgin Group. Returning to our public limited company, this is when you can issue shares to the public. This is something that larger companies want to do if they want to increase funding, which is a really great thing. However, more shareholders means that owners do risk losing control. And they might have to face additional regulation just to make sure everybody's shares, everybody's interest, everybody's money is protected. For example, we have Tesco and British Airways. To look at a quick example, going back to Fred, our decorator, and his friends who set up a business, maybe they went incorporated instead of unincorporated. So if they went to the bank and got their loan and they actually lost their money, something really bad happened, they would lose their initial investment, but it would actually be the business that would be responsible for paying back the company's debts, not the individual owners. This means that they are a little bit more secure. So that's incorporated and unincorporated. We're going all the way back up now, and we're going to look at something called a cooperative. So a cooperative is actually an organisation that's owned and controlled by its members rather than its shareholders, its traditional owners. So this is something like John Lewis or the Co-op. In this situation, members may actually be members of staff, just like in John Lewis, or with the Co-op, for example, they might be customers. Profits are still really important here, but the key goal for a cooperative is the welfare of its members. Back all the way out, and we're going to go have a look at another type of organisation, a not-for-profit. Unlike a for-profit organisation or a profit-seeking organisation, making a profit for owners is not the goal here. Actually, our objective in a not-for-profit organisation is usually to be as cost-effective as possible and as efficient as possible. So this includes things like trade unions, charities, clubs and societies. So not-for-profits can actually exist in the private sector, but also in the public sector. And we're going to look at a specific type, and this is a non-governmental organisation, which is actually a not-for-profit in the private sector. So this means that it's owned by its investors, and it has a responsibility to owners and shareholders, despite the fact that it's not mainly aiming for profit maximisation. It has other goals instead that might be, for example, having really high ethical standards. A great example of this is something like Oxfam or the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So, private sector done, on to the public sector, which is actually owned by the state rather than individuals or groups, and it has a responsibility to its government. We can split this up into a state-owned industry or a particular government office. Now, in our state-owned industry, we have an organisation that could either be not-for-profit or profit-seeking, for example, the Saudi Aramco. And then we go on to our government office, which is a little bit different because it's always going to be a not-for-profit. So, for example, in the UK, we have the National Health Service, which is a healthcare organisation that is run as a government office and not-for-profits, and you have the Peace Corps. And then we go zooming back out. Here is a great little family tree of all the different organisations you might come across during your studies. If we zoom further back out, you'll see that actually this is part of a much larger video on organisations in general, which is part of our E1 and OCS study resources. So obviously, if you purchase the course, you will be able to get access to these, as well as study texts if you prefer to read something on a screen, or revision notes if you are stuck for time, or maybe you just want a refresher. And we have support from lots of other tutors, and basically just a really wide range of resources for all of your CIMA studies. As well as all of these different resources, actually, if you go to our website, you can actually get access to some free stuff. At the moment, this includes the first week of a course you might be studying, plus a free mock exam. In addition to this, if you enjoyed this video or you would like to see some more on some different topics, you can always like and subscribe to our channel. Once again, thank you very, very much for listening. It has been great chatting with you. Good luck with the rest of your studies.